All right, my friends, welcome to another episode of Doctors and Cars. I'm joined by the one and only Dr. Austin Johnson, Stanford-trained dermatology resident, went to Stanford for med school, for residency, and is actually an insider at Med School Insiders. So, first of all, Austin, where are we at right now?
We are in sunny, beautiful California, specifically San Remo. And we are currently enjoying the benefits of spring in California, if there is such a thing. I would argue, being from California, it's kind of like the same thermostat turned up a couple of degrees.
Dude, it's so nice.
I know.
I mean, you're from Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Now in California in the Bay Area. This is where I was born and raised. I just absolutely love it here. It's peak. And now we're in my little ND3 Mazda Miata with the top down, enjoying what's soon to be golden hour. And by the way, for those who are also car heads, I have a whole new channel called Jubbal and Cars where I review this car and other cars, and you can find that link below. But today what we're going to talk about is more about the life of doctors, the different training paths, finances, all that good stuff. So we're going to do our best here. We got two guys who are over 6'1", or I guess I'm 6'1", you're 6'3", 6'4", fitting in a tiny ND Miata, but I think we're actually making do. It's not too bad.
I'm enjoying the drive so far.
This is great.
I got a pro driver here with me anyway. So.
I'm no pro. Aspiring. So Austin, I guess starting off, finances, future plans, etc. I think a lot of people who are tuning in, they're also in medical school and residency, even premeds, who are looking to becoming a doctor, and they want to know, like, is it worth the time investment, and is the financial payoff worthwhile?
Yeah. Oh man, such a hard question, especially recent developments of the student loan space, constantly fighting the uphill battle of RVUs and CMS. I think you look back historically, can't remember the statistics right off the top of my head, but relative to inflation, we're getting paid less as attending physicians than we were. I think it was 2003 was the cutoff point for that. So,
although the counterpoint is that just about every employee is like not keeping up with inflation. Like, wages just aren't keeping up.
True. So I think that unfortunately for medicine isn't safe from that. But it took me, I think, until you're seeing me now, truly like PGY2 year, to understand that going to medical school and going through residency can still be worthwhile so long as you retain your interests, who you are. It's the very reason we're in the car right now is because I love cars, Dr. Jubbal loves cars, and we can still enjoy that and still make it financially meaningful in terms of being a doctor, because if you're able to carve out what you think will be enough time in your schedule, you're still very well compensated. And I think another benefit to Bay Area is just learning how much you can do beyond taking care of patients with a degree such as an MD. Even though I'm planning on practicing pretty much full-time as a dermatologist, I have other interests in industry, and hobbies are Med School Insiders, a bunch of other things that make me kind of feel like that financial volatility that people are experiencing now between loans and interest and the state program going away and other things coming to the forefront. You can still regain some agency and look for that opportunity.
I like that. I think when it comes to finance, that's my radar detector.
I love it. You need one.
I definitely need one. Don't do anything illegal. That's it. You know, we don't condone any speeding of any kind. When it comes to, I mean, I left plastic surgery residency, so maybe I'm not the right person to say this, but when I look back and even when I was in it, I very much enjoyed college, med school, and in residency. Especially med school for me were probably like my best years, because you're learning so much, and sure, you're not making the income that your peers are, your high achieving, ambitious peers who are not going into medicine, but maybe because I also grew up from more humble beginnings, there's something nice about just the delta and enjoying that small delta increase. So going from a med student to a resident, just making $60K a year. Actually, at the time, it was probably like 55. I felt like I was balling.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm so like, because in med school I had this budgeting app. It was called Spendbook, and it wasn't automated at all. You had to input each and every transaction yourself. And I remember one year I calculated it was like $22,000 in a year that I'd spent across rent, food, everything, transportation.
That's pretty good.
And I was like, dude, as a resident making 60?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, after taxes, but like,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do with that? Like, I'll pay down. I had very little loans. Maybe I'll like invest. You know, so I think there's actually something to smaller stepwise progressions. And even when it comes to traveling, for the longest time, I found the most budget. Like when interviewing for med school for residency, like most budget or like crash with the med students that were currently there. You know, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then when I got out on my own, I was like, okay, now I'm going to travel to New York. Which hotel? $90 a night, $100 a night. And then I went to 120 and 150 and then 170 and then 200. And each step you enjoy it, but when you drag it out more, that hedonic adaptation is delayed.
Yeah.
And as a result, you're actually happier, because if you go from economy to first class with nothing in between, you now are used to first class, and you feel that huge jump and that pleasure when you go to first class, which, by the way, I've never done first class, so I don't know what it's like, but from what I've seen, you're gonna feel this really big, wow, positive emotion. This is incredible. And now you're spoiled. You can't go back to first class. You can't even go back to business, because you're like, this is too peasant to compared to first class. So even with flights, now I do premium economy, and now occasionally I'll do business. So it's like you spread things out, and I think that hedonic adaptation when it comes to even finances of medical training somewhat applies. Although here you go, broke student, medical resident making essentially minimum wage when you factor in the hours, and then making very good money in terms of multiple six figures as an attending physician.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing I'm curious about is your future.
Yeah.
You are currently at Stanford, about to start PGY3. Do you know if you're going to go into academia or private practice, or what kind of practice setting?
Yeah, always.
By the way, if I get a little bit too fast with my driving, like if you start getting sick, let me know.
No, this is what I trade reading books in the car for. So, I think, you asked me a year ago, I would have had a more rosy picture of academia. And that's saying, like, going through 5 years of med school, I did at least 3 years at Stanford. I had some hope that would still be, like, viable for me in terms of my multitude of interests and financial goals. Ask me that now, like you are. I really don't see myself going into academia.
What changed?
I think the first thing that changed when I got to Stanford was seeing the trend of graduating residents and how 1 or 2 out of the 8 or 10 sometimes that we have go into academia. That for me was the first red flag, like, what is going on here? So I started asking people. And obviously you would expect someone to be like, being around the bush a little bit about like, oh yeah, academia is still good. Like this, it's kind of this taboo thing to talk about, right? Like, you want more money, you want more compensation, but it's not out of greed. And so what I'm getting at is the graduates who are now like moving on to their jobs are openly saying like, it just isn't worth the politics, the bureaucracy, and the money. And for anyone who's watching or listening in academics or going into academics, there are certain types of people that will succeed maximally in those environments. But I think it can also be very tough as someone who wants to do right by everyone to go into that environment, and going back financially, doing it at cost at best, right? You are actually more beholden in academics than people say. I think there's this debate in dermatology, like, where do you have more freedom? If you're in a PE-backed dermatology practice, or if you're in like this ivory tower. And I would argue either extreme is terrible in its own way, because even the academic institution that's like Stanford, I feel that push and see attendings being pushed to see more patients for the same salary, do more things, and essentially function like private practice doctors, while also balancing research, teaching, administrative responsibilities. And to me, I want more freedom. That's a huge thing for me, is like, even if academics pay more, there's other things about that area that trouble me, and I think everyone has their own experience there, but to me, I realized that it can be a long game, and I'm kind of done playing the game for this.
Politics.
That's it. It's like, and seeing that firsthand, again, I'm not at all speaking about specifics, but every subspecialty within dermatology, the politics of that, I was like, we're in supposedly one of the happiest specialties in medicine. And I see the academic dermatologist not being happy. And that really troubled me. And then I get to hear, for example, some of them are always fighting about the fact that, like, they still have to pay for parking at the hospital they work at. They, sometimes they have to do a specific project or get on a certain track. And if they don't make that, their salary is cut. Like, to me, that lack of control is very, very concerning. And I think it's only going to get worse as margins get tighter and growth continues to be the biggest thing. I mean, it's literally one of those things where I've been in the game long enough and also experienced growing up in a small town where that dichotomy has taught me that I want to be somewhere in the middle.
Dr. Johnson has incredible stats and an even more impressive story. If you want to connect with him directly, now you can. Because normally, getting time with him one-on-one means getting on a waiting list that's ever increasing. And some premeds wait months for a spot. But with our live, physician-led Q&As inside our school community, anyone can ask Dr. Johnson how he scored in the 99.9th percentile on the MCAT, how he went from a small-town student to Stanford Medical School, or what he did early on to match into one of the most competitive specialties in all of medicine. Come ask him what you actually want to know. Free school trial in the link below. You know, it kind of reminds me of, even in plastic surgery, there's so many people that go into plastics and they interview and they tell you that, hey, they want to do reconstructive plastic surgery because it has more of that academic appeal.
Yes.
And then the number of plastic surgery residency graduates who actually stay in reconstruction and rather than going into aesthetics is very small.
Yeah.
So there's a large shift there, and I think people don't like talking about it, but money is a powerful incentive. It shouldn't be the only thing, because I would argue that you're going to end up being a lot less happy if you just focus on compensation over other factors. And I told my whole story as to why I left plastic surgery of all things. By the way, if you go into aesthetics, that is like the single highest paying field in all of medicine. But I did not want to do aesthetics. I wanted to do recon, and then even then it pays well, but I wanted to do some other things with my life and impact and yada yada. I talked about that elsewhere. Once you're making enough, there's diminishing returns. So I'd say that, you know, when you're talking about dermatology, different kinds of practice settings and this decision making, it's similar in that you're going to make enough regardless of where you're practicing as a dermatologist. The question is, where are you going to be happy? And if academia has a certain set of pros and cons, so does community, so does private practice, so does X, Y, and Z. And I think it's important to start thinking about that earlier on in residency, to then start seeking out those opportunities and shaping what kind of practice you want to go into. Because in residency, you are by definition in academia, and you don't have to just stick with the default and go on autopilot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's easy to. I mean, and you're almost, for lack of better terms, like groomed to do that in a way. But it's really hard to see. Like, I think we as physicians, and this probably is a shared phenomenon across everything, even PAs. My wife's a PA. We have lost the leadership role in medicine, and because of that, academia is still run by business people first. I mean, SHC, as an example, is a huge organization, and to me, the incentives are not aligned in the way that to practice the way I worked. So, to that end, like Dr. Jubbal said, the money is like a powerful factor, especially when you're faced with debt. And while I may not be hunting after the highest profit margins, I feel like when you are this far in, like I'm 30 years old now, and looking back at me, like that was where my 20s I sacrificed to help people and work and learn and enjoy, of course, that process. I also want to be duly compensated at the end. and allow myself to enjoy things like the drive from where now, just as often. So.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about other types of compensation while you are still in training. So as a med student or as a resident, what are the different avenues that people can pursue or that you've tried out yourself or that you would recommend for the other med students, residents, and even attending physicians who are watching?
Yeah. I think this is something that gives you autonomy and actually has increased my satisfaction in residency in that, there is the typical moonlighting, which depending on your specialty, for example, for us, we can't do it until our final year of residency, so that's not viable for me. But some people can actually start right away, like radiology. They're able to start moonlight literally right away. So that's a really good way to train and to earn extra money. Hopefully not burn yourself out. That's the number one goal. But then there are additional ways to leverage your expertise. And one of my passions in life is mentoring next generation physicians and healthcare professionals. And Med School Insiders is an excellent example. This is by no means like,
thank you.
Even though I work for Med School Insiders, like the reason I've worked with them for the better part of half a decade now is because I believe that we have so much knowledge and skills to be able to give to that next stressed generation wanting to get into medicine, and we can make it so much better for them. And to steal like Dr. Jubbal's slogan, like that happier, healthier generation of people, I feel like that's really enjoyable.
Yeah, that's our mission. Create a generation of happier, healthier, and more effective future doctors, and like that's what we do through and through.
And that's a viable. That's something you could easily fit into a schedule, and you get compensated fairly for that. I think another option to think of it, this is maybe more derm specific, but industry starts seeking out younger generations of physicians in terms of, depending on your regulations at your institution, whether or not you can start developing partnerships there. I think in the Bay Area, it's a great example of like a lot of companies would really enjoy an MD.
Oh, for sure.
In their AI space, in their clinical space, their product space. That was something I had never appreciated until this year, where I was like, wow, like.
I mean, you're at Stanford of all places too. That's like the epicenter of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
These are really good opportunities. What have you seen in the, health tech or the entrepreneurial space there?
Yeah, a lot of startups, which, ironically or not, they sometimes come from Stanford undergrad dropouts themselves.
Of course.
Are seeking out physicians for early development of certain products, certain spaces, and even, normally people think like, oh, they need a derm to develop a new topical. No. We also are getting approached a lot for developing AI. For example, the tracking skin changes or being able to ascertain clinical information, train things to diagnose images. There's a ton of opportunities for that. And I think you can also consider yourself like at the general consulting space too, of how companies position themselves in the physician space and what physicians value. I think the true value we give to these companies is that they never went down our road. They never took a decade to be in science and medicine, so they only have the view from the outside and what they hear. And we have a different lens through which we look at the same thing. And so that's been really fun to like test that stuff out. I think it's a low risk thing in residency to do because, believe it or not, you do have ample time if you can at general surgery. I'm sorry, but like there's certain times.
Zero surgery especially.
Yeah.
But really any surgery, subspecialty.
Research months or something.
Yeah, fair.
There's ample time to explore these, and it's skill building too. It gives you value at the end so that when you approach practices, you can also be of higher value because you can be on the operational level, the administrative, the leadership level. And, as we accelerating now, accelerate your career faster than someone who would just stay entirely clinical.
I like that a lot. So do you have any med school loans or undergrad loans?
I have plenty, and So does my wife. My wife went through PA school. Most PA schools are for profit, so her private loan burden was extremely high. My wife and I both have loans. We've pooled them together, consolidated them, done the whole thing. I think the silver lining of the last few years is with the interest pause because of COVID, those haven't grown in a significant way, but they have resulted in us having a negative net worth. Even as like being at a relatively high paying residency here at Stanford because of the union efforts, it's still really tough. I think that's a huge anchor that always contextualizes opportunities in a way, for better or worse. But it's a huge problem. Like, if I had the burden that me and my wife had, and I was going potentially to a lower paid specialty, I'd be really worried about finding the highest paid thing rather than the most or the best fit for me.
Do you feel like the union efforts at Stanford, which were controversial some number of years ago when it was first coming forward, it seems to me like just about every resident is like very much pro for it. Do you agree with that, or 100%. Now that it's been implemented, are there any downsides that you've seen?
100%. The income change was on the order of 30%.
So what was the before and after?
So the before was roughly, like you were kind of quoting, in the 60s, mid 60s, low 70s for the senior residents. We start out 103 now.
Wow.
And
that's a lot better.
That's a lot better. And because of that, and the other benefits, like we had a moving allowance and an education allowance and more protected time off, like maternity leave is a big issue in a lot of residencies, and this union enabled at least a grievance process to be able to challenge policies. It has 100% been a net positive. I don't care, like, putting 1 to 2% of that towards your union dues when you gained $30,000 to $40,000 is, to me, like a total good trade. But I think the downside to it is that we now have to, at the department level, deal with budget cuts and changes that are purported to be due to union rules, when in fact it's a union busting effort to do that. So there's a lot of challenge, and we're actually coming up on a contract negotiation for this year, and it's a lot of challenge. It's surprising how much we have to work and fight for fair pay. So it's not set in stone. We still have to fight for it.
Whenever things renew, it's like you're not guaranteed this thing moving forward.
And a good example of like someone, the most powerful, I think, in healthcare, Corona is an example of a nurses union. They fight tooth and nail, and often, as you may have seen in the news, strike when they don't get fair increases. And when I'm talking fair, like around here, it's like a 3% bump per year to keep up with inflation. It's nothing insane. It's even harder for us to do that because the precedent isn't there. And so this first contract negotiation was obviously a huge win, but everything is incremental from here. And I think a lot of residents just don't understand how much of a positive effect that's having on the program, because they're so far removed. We have like 1,200 residents, 1,300 residents across Stanford. And these collective efforts aren't felt unless they're hugely positive or starting to become negative. And I think that, to me, as a whole, like, you can argue pros, cons of unions in spaces like residency. I think it's necessary.
Well said. I love this part of the drive. It's just so like, as soon as I came yesterday, when you come to a new place, or you haven't been back to your like hometown or whatever in a while, you come back with like fresh eyes. You're like, oh my god, this is gorgeous. This is incredible.
Yeah.
How has your relationship been challenged? I guess.
Yeah.
Both like your romantic, partner, but also just friendships, family, etc. While you are in training.
There's a lot of choices that one, including me, has to make to decide priorities. And I think I always described it as like that three-legged stool, where you only get to choose so many things. And for me, most of the time it was like health and fitness, my now wife, and study. And because of that, a lot of my like potential friend relationships never were fully developed when we were together in med school. And that taught me a lot going into residency, how important that can be. I think you have to be extremely intentional about relationships in medicine, whether you're a student, a resident, or I venture and attending. And that is because you are making relationships with probably the staff and patients more than you have time for those people at home, family, friends, loved ones. And that can be multiplied in the setting of, for example, someone like my wife who is in orthopedic surgery and has an OR days that run extremely long. So you have to be almost as meticulous as you were in your studying as you are with your relationships without overly objectifying things. And I would say I'm not the best at it. I think
you're better than me, that's for sure, because none of mine have lasted.
I think me and my wife were long distance in med school. She was in PA school, and it would help to both be busy. That was like an easy thing. But one thing I always did was I always called her at the end of every night, no matter how long or short, no matter good day, bad day. And I think that was our commitment to know that this too shall end. And
I like that a lot.
We got through that. Fast forwarding now, we're actually having a different struggle in that we have different timings and priorities and activities. And so even though we're physically together, we still have to make sure we don't drift apart. And same goes for residency classes. Like we're a group of, I think eight in residency, if I remember right. Every class is a little different. And we have to be intentional with our times. We actually have to get together for dinners. Otherwise we're spread across clinics and you don't make lifelong friends. And I have a few great friends from med school, but I probably could have had more. I probably could have done better. But I chose to I was very, very anal about my studying and getting into Derm. And I think that was a sacrifice for sure.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah.
And I think also personality types. I don't know the kind of way that you normally approach social relationships, but for me, I've always been one of the guys that's like fewer closer relationships rather than being like the social butterfly that has a lot of lighter relationships. So I'm the same way for med school. There's only a handful of guys that I'm really still in touch with and close with. And I also just work my tail off.
Yeah.
Because, like we have these goals that we want to work toward, and there's this saying that in life there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you willing to, you can't have it all.
Yeah.
And you need to decide for yourself, what are you going to prioritize more above other things, because you will not be able to have the same health and physique and same social life and same academic and professional accomplishments and pursuits all equally. Like you need to pick and choose and prioritize. And that does not mean let your health suffer. Obviously your health and all those other things are deeply intertwined. That's why health and fitness for me has always been number one. Ever since I got sick with my condition and got hospitalized as an 18-year-old, I've very much honed on that because I think it's the single most compounding thing. But relationships are probably higher up than most of us realize in terms of long-term happiness, satisfaction, and so on. And that admittedly is not something that I've always prioritized as much as I should have, I think, looking back.
Yeah, I think it took another person to teach me that. My wife, bless her, she truly taught me that there was more to life than achievement. And I think it's because I had an amazingly understanding family that they allowed me to grow in a single mindset. Of course, I had my younger brother and stuff, but meeting her, I realized there was more to life than medicine, money, wealth, whatever you want to call it. And she's still teaching me those lessons. But the trade-off for me is one of a spectrum. I think another part of the idea of there's only trade-offs is you can change those trade-offs later on, but it's when do you toggle this? That's the hard question.
Like for a lot of premeds, it's what I see is this idea of, I can just I can take a few extra years to get into med school.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you need to do your 4 years of med school and your 3 to 7 years of residency no matter what.
Yeah.
What can you do to pull that forward? Because all your life goals of having a house, a family, kids, whatever, those things are very much going to be influenced and oftentimes delayed because of your medical training.
Exactly.
And if the next year is going to pass by no matter what, the 12 months that are going to come, why not do everything you can in the next 12 months to actually put yourself in the best position possible to get into med school the first time and get into the best program possible? Over the next year, are you willing to put in a little bit more effort than you otherwise would have to put yourself in the, you know, the best possible med school that will open the most doors? Because it's going to be hard for you to go into ENT if your med school that you attend doesn't have the ENT program. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder.
Exactly.
So I think optimizing those priorities based on where you are in life and in your training is very, very important. The road is clear now, so I gotta just gotta rip it a little.
Excellent maneuvering.
This car is so small, so light. It's funny. It only weighs like 2,400 pounds. So with a passenger in it, I'm like, oh wow, this car does feel a little bit heavier now. It's crazy. Just one passenger is like 10% or.
It is. No, you're right. To almost 10% of the way. That's it. I'm weighing it down here, giving us so we don't fly off the road. I'm happy. This is surgical speed, but it is.
That's
This is something I don't get to do with my wife. So, sorry, Paige.
Don't worry, Paige. I'll turn it back in one piece.
Yeah. Sorry, I try to do this in our car and she freaks out.
Gets car sick too, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that probably doesn't help. I think.
Once I was in I took my mom and brother. I do the whole like credit card churning ever since actually med school and residency apps. I use that to, and I know you do the same.
Oh yeah, I love it.
To like fund travel, hotels, flights, because it gets otherwise very expensive. So I started doing that college, med school, and I've stuck with it. Obviously, I do it way differently now than I used to. And I remember this is a few years ago. I finally got Hyatt Globalist status, and they give you this Category 7 certificate. And I want to go to this nice place, and I'm like, I don't want to just go to this hotel by myself. Like I had to share with someone. So I took my mom and brother with me, and it was so funny. We all carpooled in my mom's Camry, which is a 2011 Sport Edition Camry, which just has like some pedals and a little lip spoiler. It's like it's not sporty at all. And my mom and brother indulged me in my hobby. I took them in the Camry and we're just like bombing these windy mountain roads near Napa.
I can imagine.
And then the brakes started giving out and fading and smelling, and I was like, okay, I need to dial it back. I was like bobbing in this Camry. It was so funny. One of my favorite memories from that time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, doing things with other people, man. You do the stuff with other people, it's just so much more fun.
100%.
I do think prioritizing relationships, I think for many of us, like high achieving, ambitious future doctors or current doctors, we oftentimes need that reminder, because the most fond memories you have, it's not you doing something by yourself, it's usually you sharing that moment with people that you care about.
Yeah.
And some of us need that reminder more often than others.
Yeah. I mean, you look back at getting into med school, match day, for most of us, like, who was that person standing next to you that made it special, right? Sure, if you made that achievement happen, but it didn't matter unless you could share it with someone. And it's hard to forget. It's hard to keep that in mind, and easy to forget a lot of the times when you're on to the next goal so quickly. Because I don't think it's healthy to necessarily just be on to the same relationship because you peaked in that one. Like, that would be the same as like me and my wife had our honeymoon and it's like, okay, that was peak, move on. No, that's not how relationships work. So
yeah, always a work in progress.
Yeah.
So I guess for the med students who want to go into dermatology, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, unfortunately, you've probably heard this before. It is a game. You have to keep playing the game. You played the game to get into med school. You have to keep playing a little bit longer. And if that means taking a research year like I did, even being at Stanford Med School, which gives you home field advantage to a top dermatology program, I was told, like, that is the way to achieve success. And I took that year, lost that year of attending paycheck, got more loans, and I got to my number one choice because of it. So when you are staring down the barrel of sacrifice, of course you don't want to do it to the detriment of your physical and mental health. But for top programs, dermatology, plastic surgery, orthopedic surgery, whatever it may be, that you undoubtedly will have to sacrifice in a department a little while longer. So I think research is key. That's a great example. But just because we're trying to be more holistic in scoring, with step 1 being pass fail and complex level 1 also being pass fail.
Yeah, step 1 going pass fail. What a cluster, what a failed experiment.
It did not help, I think, in our residency admissions, to be honest. I mean, people
didn't
were
help
just
med students either in terms of their stress.
They were just less prepared for step 2, and that was it. They only had one score to prove themselves.
Yeah, it accelerated the research arms race. It didn't improve stress. These are things that, I made videos about this back in 2019 before this happened, that it's not going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And surprise, competitive things are competitive. Anyway, I don't want to derail.
Yeah.
But yes,
that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
What you guys need to know is that Dr. Johnson here went to Stanford for med school, Stanford residency in dermatology. So he's peak performer. Dermatology is like the number one most competitive specialty. It's like plastic surgery or derm, number 1, number 2, like back and forth. And getting into Stanford in any residency program is very challenging. Doing it in derm, it's like compounding on how difficult that is. So Dr. Johnson knows a thing or two about being a high performer. And what I'll say is that you're also mentoring a lot of students, pre-meds and med students at med school instead. So for the students who want help, especially in derm or navigating very competitive medical schools, if you're a pre-med, Dr. Johnson is available. He has an ever-expanding wait list, but you can get on that wait list linked below. And if you also want to join our team as a medical student, a resident, or an attending physician, then you can also visit the link down below for additional details. And I guess, Austin, any final words for the pre-meds and the med students who are currently watching?
I think you probably heard this a lot, but I'm going to compound on it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is golden hour that eventually comes. And that may be years or potentially even a decade away. But when it comes, it is sweet. It feels, like Dr. Jubbal mentioned, it feels like it's all worth it. It will be. The question becomes, what is your golden hour? That's the thing that people mess up. So don't forget that this is your own journey. And while you have to put in a certain number of years, it's what you do with those years that matters the most.
Well said. All right, my friends, that was an episode of Doctors and Cars with Dr. Austin Johnson. If you have any other questions, leave them down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Much love, and I'll see you all in the next one.